What's up guys, Mike here from Ekim Knives, and I'm back with another episode of How to Make a Frame Lock. This is episode 14 where we're going to focus on some detail work. But first, before you guys even ask, I've been very busy. I didn't forget about you guys. I know it's been probably a month by the time you see this, but I've been busy working on other projects, and I'll show you a little bit of that there. If you follow me on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, or any of those things, you probably have an idea of what's been going on behind the scenes, but I am working on the Albatross and trying to get a lot of those out the door. Back to the task at hand. Let's work on some details. Now, as you can see, the action broken really nicely, as I almost, if that was sharp, I would have cut my thumb off just there. No stick, nice and flippy, and nice and smooth. Okay, great. So in this episode, we're going to have to grind the blade. Now, I've ground blades before on video and showed you how to do it. This is going to be the same thing. So I'm not going to make you sit and watch a how to grind the blade video. It's just going to be a simple hollow grind. But what I will show you is a trick. Now, you can grind it in the handle like this if you want. I don't like doing that because if you slip and you hit the handle, now you got to make a new handle or adjust everything, and it's just, to me, it's not worth the risk. I take the blade out and I grind just the blade itself. And being that it's a flipper, you have just enough meat to hold on to get your control going with your thumb. Now, you also don't want to grind your blade too far back into the handle. So you want to take your marker, like this here, and just do that. Oh, if that'll focus on the knife and not me. See the marker in there? When I get in there, do some of that. Now this way, when I'm grinding my blade, I know not to go back that far. Here's another tip. You also don't want to go forward too far or it's going to look really goofy. So if I go and I grind my blade like that, that's a lot of wasted blade right there. To me, anyway. You guys might like it aesthetically, and of course this is just a design feature. It's not going to affect the functionality of the knife. If you like that, if you want to cut this out and make a big finger choil, a forward choil in there, that's fine. That's your prerogative. Me, I like to bring the grind back a little further, so if we take that same plunge, and we come back to there, now I got maximum blade and to handle. Right, a maximum cutting edge, I guess I should say. Now is the time, and forget about what this looks like. So you don't have to worry about getting a perfect hand rub satin finish. But now is the time to soften everything. When I say that, naturally when you flip a flipper, you're going to go like that, and your finger's going to slide down the spine of the knife. Please, please, please do something to soften this. These edges can be very sharp. Right out of making it, and mine are very sharp right now. And after doing this a number of times, the user is going to, they're going to notice it. And what does just about every knife collector do? They do this, right? They sit there, they're doing whatever, and they're flipping their knife, and they're flipping it, and they're flipping it. And you don't want them to have raw fingers by the end of the day. Because when it comes time to pick up their knife, they're going to pick up a different one and not yours. We don't want that. So what we also want to do, and the way I do it is the wonderful invention of a Scotch-Brite wheel, is we're going to take on the backspace, right in front of the backspacer, I'm going to make two lines. We'll zoom, let that focus in. You see that? That's going to act as a plunge for when I soften this spine. You do not want to soften it. Now, I'm talking about softening the inside right here. You do not want to soften it where the backspacer is, or it's not going to look flush. It's not going to look right. You see what I mean? We'll do this again because I'm a dummy and forgot to put the microphone on. So we're just going to pretend to die this again, so it looks like I dyed it once. That makes sense? Just dye your blade. Doofus. Wow, I laid this on thick. Alright, that looks good enough. Well guys, it looks like I'm a little bit rusty with my grinds. So it's a good thing that we didn't make this tutorial on how to grind a blade, because you would have just seen me fighting with it for the past couple of hours. Now, this is something that happens in knife making. So guys, when you have a bad day and you screw up your grind, don't worry about it. It happens to all of us. Now, I guess when you get more advanced, you just screw up a little less, but you still screw up nonetheless. So don't worry about it. So here's the grind right now as it sits. It's free-handed on the 12-inch wheel. I'll put in some clips so you can see it, or you already saw it. And it's symmetrical. It's nice and thin at the cutting edge. So what's the problem with the grind, you might ask, is the set and finish itself is not the best I've done. Right? I've gotten to myself to a level of finishing where I know I could do a better job than this, but the fact that this is a prototype knife that is not going to leave my shop, I'm not going to spend hours fixing or pursuing or chasing this, just because I have other work to do. So we're going to leave it as is. We might do an acid finish anyway, because a lot of you guys have asked for that. So alright, here's the grind, and maybe you could see what I'm talking about here, if it'll focus in. Okay. See it? It might look clean to some of you guys, but there are little inconsistencies in the grind. Like if you see right here along the belly, there you go, now you can see it. Now, of course, I can go back on the grinder and fix that, but like I said, I don't want to fight with it any longer than I have because I'm rusty. So I needed this practice anyway. Okay, there's another issue, but this one's easily remedied, so we're going to cover this as well. When you're doing your plunges and you tend to go over that little bit right there, you see that little shiny spot? It's worse on this side. That's from the finishing belt and me getting too aggressive with it, rounding out my plunge, and pushing back too hard. But provided you didn't make that too deep with a 60 grit or 120 grit belt or something, we can clean that up and blend that all in because we still have to finish the flats. This is why I like to finish the flats afterwards, and then maybe go back and just touch up the grind with a finishing belt, and that's it. At the disc grinder now, we have 600 grit sandpaper on the disc, and you're going to need your blade and a small magnet. As you can see, I've taped this one up so it doesn't really scratch up, and you want to take it and put it on the flat like that. Maybe move it up a little bit. So you want to put it like that. So it's not touching the grind necessarily, especially with a hollow grind. But over here is going to need to be a lot of material is going to have to be removed from here. So your pressure is going to have to favor this side as opposed to the flat. If I favor it evenly, I'm going to sand more off the flat than I am off of here, and it's going to change the parallel of the blade. So with having the magnet there like that, I could put my fingers in here like that and kind of focus the pressure towards the back, and I could take my other finger and put it here on the flat of the blade. I'll turn it around this way so you can see it. So pressure on the magnet, and then I could press with my fingers right here. I'll show you what that looks like. Just some Windex. Of course, I'm going to be very careful with my approach to the disc, because if I hit that finished bevel, I'm going to have to regrind it. We definitely don't want to do that. You can see where it's removing material. Now this isn't removing a whole lot. That's why we're starting at 600 grit. And as you can see, it's already cleaned up the flat, and I can still see the surface grinder marks up here. So I'm going to have to focus my pressure a little bit up here. Now, like I said before, you don't want to get crazy on this step. Don't remove a ton of material. Don't use a 60 grit disc. You just want to clean it up. That's all you want to do. And the smoother you make this, the easier it will be for your detent ball to ride, which will give you a smoother action. Okay, now you can see we have all but removed it. We have cleaned up that shiny spot. Oh, helped if I had it in frame. So we have all but removed that little bit right there. We cleaned up the shiny spot by the plunge, and we just have this little bit left over from the surface grinder right there. So I'm just going to clean that up, and then we're done with this side. Check that out. That's 600 grit on a disc sander. When it's nice and flat, of course. But it still has swirl marks in it, as you can see. It's almost a mirror. The good old granite surface plate. You're going to need one of these to do it right. Now, you can, of course, get your good old sanding block and put it in a vise and hand sand it this way. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't like doing it that way, because here's my sanding block. Here's a really old crappy blade. My flat towards the end gets really thin, as you can see right there. So naturally, I don't care how hard you try, you're going to want to teeter-totter like that. And that's going to make for scratches in your finish if you start getting sideways or crooked. It can be done, and I've done it, but I think this way is smarter. So for this, I have the same 600 grit sandpaper that I was using before, and I got this repositionable 3M 75 spray glue. What I'm going to do is spray the back of the sandpaper like this, and get it all over my fingers, because that's how I roll. And I'm going to position it right at the very edge. I'm going to have to put you on a tripod so you can see this a little better. Okay, now that glue is going to hold it down good enough so it's not going to wrinkle up and screw up my flat surface, but I could also peel it back without making a huge mess. We have our blade right here, and the reason I chose that 600 grit finish is because now it's not going to take a whole lot of work for us to clean this up. It will, however, rely on you keeping it straight. So I'm going to position myself. I like to, whatever it takes, maybe position your finger on the pivot hole, or whatever grip you can find that's comfortable that you could keep it straight. So we'll do a little test pass. And it looks like, let's do it sideways so you can see it. It looks like the positioning of my finger, so I want something in the front and on the back here to push. So that might be the grip right there. Thumb on the pivot hole, 3 fingers, pushing so I can keep it straight. Now, here's why that's important. I'll show you on this scrap blade. If I come and I just grab the pivot hole and I do this and it goes sideways, my satin is going to be sideways. You need to pull it as straight as possible. And it has to be repeatable and consistent. We got a little Windex. Make that nice and Windexy. And I'm going to pull the length of the block. Remember my grip here. Finger on the front. And straight towards me. I'm dragging my hand across the thing. Now I'm not going to come all the way off the block. I'm going to lift up and then move it. Let me show you this way so you can see it. Thumb, finger, right? Finger on the grind, on the flat rather. I'm going to drag my whole hand, so I'm essentially lightly sanding the palm of my hand. Bring it to the edge like that, lift up. And that'll give us a clean satin finish. Now, of course, you're going to have to do a number of passes as straight as possible. Straight as possible. And you just repeat this until you get the finish you want. Straight as possible. Now, we've only made however many passes that was. 5 or 6, 7 passes. We're going to take a quick look at it, and you tell me if you know a faster way. See that? I'd say we're 90% there already. Don't mind the dirty hands, it's knife making. That's the way your hands are supposed to look. See, nice and clean. It took about 20 to 25 passes per side, something like that. Okay, remember this mark that we made? What we're going to do is soften the inside of the frames so it's more comfortable when you flip the flipper on the knife. Now, I do that with a super fine Scotch-Brite wheel like this one here, and I just kind of freehand it. Now, that line is going to tell me where to stop, so think of it as a plunge line on your grind, and I'm just going to put the world's tiniest little hollow grind down here and soften it up. Alright? I'm also going to go around and I'm going to soften all of this. But you don't want to get too crazy. You just want to make it so it's softened but consistent, I guess I should say is the right word. You me turn that off. I'm awfully close to it. I don't want to get sucked in. Alright, enough. Okay. See if that shows up. You see that little line there? And where I plunged in, if you look at it this way, now you can see it. You see, if it'll focus, there we go. You can see I plunged in right here at the line and went the length of it. You can't really see it, but you'll feel it. That's the whole idea here, guys. There we go. You can see that's pretty even. It's close. It's not perfect. I still have to adjust it. You see the plunge is just a little off on one of them. So now I'm just gently going to blend that in and make them match up. See that? Much better, much more even. Now, if you can't get it freehanding on the wheel, guys, you could always just take a little bit of fine sandpaper, like a 800 grit, and a sanding block, and smooth it out that way. You don't even need a sanding block, you could just do it by hand. But the idea is to get them consistent. We're going to go all around the frame and work on all of that. Outside this time, not inside. And you don't have to make yourself crazy doing a deep relief or making it super even. You just want to knock off that sharp corner. Look at that, I'm actually being safe for once. Now, remember when we had contoured this, there was some scratching up here? This super fine wheel happens to be fine enough where you can gently touch that up on here and just kind of take some of the deeper scratches out. But afterwards, you're going to want to follow it up by hand. So I'm just going to very gently go over it on the wheel just to save me a little bit of work. And I'll blend it by hand with some sandpaper. Okay guys, I did a little bit of hand sanding. Now, the object of this is not to put a perfect satin finish on it. You just want a clean foundation so when you blast the frames, you don't see any peaks or valleys or scratches. So, as you can see, it looks a little bit rough here, but that's okay, that's all going to blast out. It has a nice clean foundation. So, we're going to go over to the blast cabinet and we're going to blast these up. Now, I basically only got this one because it's so small, because I'm obviously limited on space in here. But I got it too so I don't have to change media. This is the 80 grit, whoa, this is the 80 grit glass bead from Harbor Freight. So, easy to find, cheap stuff, but it'll leave a nice rougher finish. This one in here, for the finer finishes, this one is 180 grit, I believe. So if you want a very fine finish, but it's a fingerprint magnet, get the 180. For the rougher stuff, like a gray look, this is 80 grit. So that's the one we're going to use. And I blast it on full blast. I can't really film it because you're not going to be able to hear me over the compressor. And you're not going to really be able to see anything through here. Well, let's take a look. It's still really dusty in here, as you can see. Little blast cabinet started off good, but now I have to cover everything in the shop when I blast. So anyway, here's my tumbler. I have this guy here, the Ultra Vibe 18. The type really doesn't matter. The Harbor Freight one's fine. You don't have to get anything specific. The media in here is the large and small ceramic triangles from McMaster-Carr. Okay, and I just mix them up 1-to-1 ratio, or it doesn't really matter. And here's the other secret ingredient, is Windex. So I like to keep them nice and wet with Windex. In the bottom, if I really dig down, there's probably there's a pool of Windex in the bottom. So you can see there. So now I'm going to tumble these for 15 minutes, and I'm going to put them on the opposite sides. They're not going to stick together, or they shouldn't, just because of the lock bar sticking out and the contoured front side. So I'll put one on that side, put one on that side, and I'll throw that over there. And we'll come back in 15 minutes. Another spray for good luck. Okay, they're in here somewhere. Here's one. As you can see by the lovely amount of sludge on it that I'm going to have to do a bit of cleaning. Alright, fresh out of the tumbler. I'll give you a nice up close so you can see what that looks like. Now, as you can see, we hand sanded those spots out in the back, and they are nowhere to be found. And all the chamfering that we did, all the heat treat, or the heat anodizing marks are gone, and we have a nice clean finish. Show you the other one here. This one was the worst offender with the scratching back here, and as you can see, it's gone. Well guys, it took the better part of the day, but we finally got this video done. Here's what we're sitting on right now, what the knife looks like. We'll even give you a little zoomy zoom, if I can figure this thing out. Whoa! There you can see the nice blasted and stone-washed finish. Very fingerprint resistant and resilient. And of course we have our satin blade, the freehand ground satin with the hand rub satin flats, and the show side. Of course, we still have to address the pivot and the elongated stop pin there, but that's going to be in the next video. Also, let's check out that action. Now that we took all that weight out of the blade, it's much snappier and still falls free under its own weight. No lock stick, no problems, just works. That's the way I like it. And with all the softening we focused on today, this is an all-day flipper, and that was the goal here, guys. When you sell to somebody, especially a collector or a user or anybody, even if they use the knife once a day, you want that experience to be the best knife experience they ever had. So super sharp where it needs to be, and super soft where it needs to be. See, I could rub this on my face all day and I'm not going to get cut. So please address those hot spots. Now, to address the elephant in the room, aside from this guy right here, where's the pocket clip? Right? If you remember a couple of videos back, I messed up the pocket clip. It was an oversight on my part. Now, I didn't really mess it up. It was just a poor design. So it's supposed to go right here, of course, but it will not sit flush. Now, a lot of you guys had some really great suggestions on how to fix that, including milling a flat here. It would be difficult, but it could be done. And other things. I've even seen standoffs suggested and stuff like that. Truth of the matter is, guys, this is a prototype. So, if I'm going to make a prototype because I plan on making a bunch of these, I'm going to change that now. That's the whole purpose of prototyping. So, I want to address any issues before I release it, and you guys tell me about the issues, and now I have to recall all these knives. You get it? That's the whole point of prototyping. So, right off the bat, I would change that, and maybe change a few things about the knife. Otherwise, like how much of a pocket sword this is. I mean, this is a 4-inch blade. This is a huge knife. Some people like that, but I think I would make it a bit smaller. Otherwise, everything else went smoothly. So I know the stuff that worked, I'm good to go. I can continue that. And the stuff that didn't work, I need to change and address. So that's the name of the game. That's the way it works sometimes, guys. And that's what you got to do. So anyway, the last video, or I shouldn't say the last video, the next video, because I'm sure there's more, is going to be about etching a logo. And I know a lot of you guys have asked me for that one. So we're going to etch the logo, we're going to sharpen her up, and we're going to address little details like these pivots. We're not going to leave them all blocky like that. And shortening the stop pin, just all the little detail stuff. And then that'll be it. I guess the knife will be complete at that point. I'm just sitting here enjoying myself that it's coming together nicely, that it's survived this much in front of this much camera time. You know I just jinxed myself and I'm going to ruin it later, but hey, I'm happy to make it this far. At least you guys got some good information before I ruined it. Alright guys, that's it for this one. This is Mike here from Ekim Knives, and I'll catch you on the next video.